quality.
Thanks so much, Claire. So a lot of what I have today dovetails with everything that Paul said. I work really closely with Paul in the Division of Water Quality. USU Extension is blessed to have this relationship where we're able to be a lot of the information sharers and the education sharers with the Division of Water Quality. So we're grateful for a lot of that collaboration. And I've seen firsthand the great things that they're doing and that they're able to help landholders accomplish, both at a community level, but also individuals. So really excited that you got to hear from them today and some of our other partners that you'll hear a little bit later. So I get to speak about soil fertility management. Paul talked about comprehensive nutrient management plans, and I started my career doing that with growers, small ag in Hawaii, and grew up there. And my favorite beach was having algal blooms, like we see a lot here now. And so after my master's program, I got to work with a lot of these small producers evaluating their nutrient losses from their properties and helping them streamline, because as Paul shared, that's a loss for your production and it's a loss of your investment when you're losing nutrients, not to mention all of the challenges downstream that can create. In this picture, we have Utah Lake, and Utah Lake is a great example of a place where we've got a little too much nutrient going on. And this is a function of a lot of different land uses. No one land use is to blame at all, but every land use and every person in the watershed needs to work together to recognize what their contribution is and how to improve that. So I'll talk a little bit more about soil specifics and hope that it helps you in your operation. Like Paul said, our goal is to keep nutrients on site. We want to keep everything working really well for you and your production, and by virtue of that, it will improve things downstream. So here we go. So nutrients and plant health. Obviously, they're essential, and y'all know this better than I do. You need the right nutrients at the right time, and obviously you're going to be using more typically of your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So these are essential for your plant growth on a larger scale, and that's what you're going to typically be managing more. But we know that if any of these other nutrients are depleted, that you're going to not have the kind of yield that you would like to have. Also, your pH can reduce the availability of some of these nutrients. So getting an insight onto the chemistry of your soil is really important, and it can take the guesswork out of things. And guesswork is often where we have that excess nutrient loss, and so we'd love to help you avoid that. One thing I want to talk about first is this Liebig's law of the minimum. It's a concept in soil fertility. So if this bucket represents your nutrient levels in your soil, the slat that's too low is that one nutrient that maybe you don't have enough of. And that one nutrient is going to limit your growth or your yield or the health of your plant. And so instead of just applying all the nutrients, and bringing the bucket up higher, then we can even have the yield keep up with that much nutrient load. We just find that one and bring it up, or the two or the three. And that's what soil testing allows us to do. If we're just broadly applying whatever, then, and I don't think everyone's doing this, but I think some new folks might benefit from understanding this. I think producers are actually really good stewards, and I think y'all want to do the right thing. But I've had this concept be new to a lot of people, so just wanted to share. If we broadly apply and we bring our nutrient levels all up at once in a capacity that we don't really need, then we can start to have nutrient antagonism and things get bound up and they don't work as effectively as they could. So having that precision balanced approach can increase your plant health and reduce your investment loss, and also help offsite. So we've talked about, nitrogen and phosphorus are a big concern for nutrient loss. They tend to aggregate in our waterways, whether it's in groundwater through leaching or in surface water loss, that erosion either from your stream banks or from the site where maybe we have some excess nutrients sitting. That all of that can aggregate and build up to situations like this. So this one on the side is a little hypothetical waterway, but it just kind of shows that we have all these contributing factors in a watershed. And but at the end of the day, at the bottom of the watershed or along the way somewhere, we may end up with nutrient problems. And throughout the presentation, I'll have some examples. So we've got Manway Reservoir is a good example. This is an image that was taken there. Not all algae is what you might associate with with the harmful algal blooms. Not every algae growth that you see is the harmful algal bloom. That's actually a cyanobacteria. We'll talk about that in a minute. But right here, we do get different situations in Utah waters. And speaking to just algal growth itself, like Paul said, it grows, it decomposes. In that process, it uses up oxygen, it kills fish, and then it recycles. So we keep having the problem. So this is just some examples, like he shared, of what can happen off-site when we have too much nutrient loss. So product management. In a little while, we'll have Mike talk about pesticides and that impact on water quality. It's really awesome if we can think of fertilizers in a lot the same way. We want to be storing in a place that has good ventilation, but also has impervious surface and a cover, because any moisture or water that gets in there is going to change your nutrient complement. And you want to know what you're applying. You want it to be what you purchased when it's time to go use it. So nutrient management planning. This is really like creating a budget for the nutrients in your soil. You figure out, you can start different ways, but a way that I think is helpful to think of is you determine what your crop needs are, and then based on soil testing results, you take away what the soil is already going to be providing for your plants, and then determine what will be helpful to augment in your soils. And in doing this, really a good soil test profile will last you for about 3 years, most of them, for most of the factors. Things like nitrogen, if that's something that you need to carefully manage in your system for your plant health, then you might want to revisit that every year, because that will change. And planning the right timing for application. So we want to be choosing, you might, for some things you could maybe do your soil test in fall after harvest, but if you're going to be, you may want to retest nitrogen at the beginning of spring if you choose that. So some people will just choose to test in spring, but finding that consistent time of year that you'll revisit your soil health will be a good thing to have in your system. And then managing other nutrient sources, like we mentioned before, manure, irrigation water. Burdette will talk about that in just a minute. That's going to bring in some nutrients as well. So just doing your budget, setting up the system. What do I need to be augmenting, and what's the best form is something you can decide after you get your results. So in preparation, you're going to decide on what test types. You can test for biological factors as well as physical properties. I'm going to talk mostly on chemical, but all of them are important, and there's the soil sampling guide for crops. If you just search USU soil sampling guide, this will come up. So, and it'll show you the different things you can test for through the lab. And then the guide itself will talk through some of those different choices that you want to make. But the thing I wanted to talk about mostly is how to determine your zones. Each sample is going to represent a zone. And sometimes, the grid pattern makes the most sense, because if you have uniform soil and it's had typically all of the same management practices across that soil, you'll probably have pretty uniform results, and you can just do your plot that way. But if you've got different soil types and different management history in these different zones, then each of those could be their own test sample that you would send in. So it just kind of depends on your goals. And if you need help with this, your county extension faculty can help you probably scope things out and just at least give you advice on the phone or on site. But choose your timing of a time that's not super wet. And also you're going to need about 10 days lead time from the time they get your sample to when they'll get the results back to you. Online it says 4 to 6 weeks, but we've actually improved our timing on that. So you'll gather your materials and get ready to go. So when you do your soil test, just clear any surface debris away and take 5 to 8 subsamples. And what I mean by that is just you'll have your soil, if you have a probe, it's the best way to do it. I did it with a shovel early in my career, and it's very complicated to get a true reflective great sample. So these guys are awesome. Sometimes your extension office will have one that you could use. You want to keep them clean, free of rust, but you just go around, and this person here they're demonstrating for a raised bed situation or infield, but you just go around with that and your subsample spaces. and mix those together, break any clods, and then package it. And my recommendation is to label it before you package it, or just right away. I can't tell you how many times I would leave the field and maybe my pen wasn't working or whatever, and then I'd confuse my samples. So you definitely want to keep your samples straight. And it's really great if you just can pull up a spreadsheet on your phone, and you can even log your coordinates where you are. I don't want to make this too complicated, but that's really helpful for coming back year to year and comparing if you know the site that you were on. So whatever works best for your purposes. If it needs to be a little less structured, that's fine. But if it's really helpful if you can go back and compare those results, and if you're in the same spot, that's the best for comparison. And then you'll send it to the lab. Now, it says online, if you read, that you want to chill it if you're sending that sample in for nitrogen. But in talking with the lab, they've said that you can just leave it out to dry for a day, and that will help secure the nitrogen. If you just even leave it out overnight, that drying in Utah, we're pretty dry, it will dry enough that it'll fix the nitrogen, and you can package it up and send it off. But if you do just want to send it right away, just put a little freezer pack, a little ice pack in there with it. And then evaluating
Sarah,
your
you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So in evaluating your results when they come back, there are some resources as well online on the USU Extension page. This one in particular for Utah Vegetable Production Guide under soil. At the bottom, it has all these solutions. What to do if, if your salinity is high, or if your pH is off. It gives you recommendations there. But then you can further determine for your specific crop what is the best timing and delivery form, and look at those specific nutrient needs and match that. One more thing to take into consideration is your soil type. If you've got a soil that water is going to move through quickly and it's a more sandy texture, you'll probably want to do like a smaller application more frequently, or use a slow release option than if you have a heavier clay soil. So factoring in topography too and slope, if it's going to run off, you don't want to apply everything at once if you've got a little bit of a slope. But in taking this kind of approach of precision management, you're going to increase your yields, reduce your losses, and also reduce the risk to the population. Just real quick, wanted to touch on these. These are emerging areas of concern that we get a lot of calls about. So harmful algal blooms. So this is a cyanobacteria, even though we call it algae. You can find advisories for where we have HABs on habs.gov. And if you notice that your source water is one that is experiencing a lot of harmful algal blooms, it would be good to reach out to UDAF, to Division of Water Quality, and just ask for some help and guidance. You can do a test, and the reason being that even when the HAB has cleared, there could be microtoxins left in the water, and we know that those can actually bioaccumulate in crops. And so I don't think we need to sound any alarm bells, but it's just something to be aware of, and we actually get a lot of questions about it. If you have a source that consistently has HABs at a high level, this is something to explore and call around and ask for help on. You can do a test. It's an ELISA test for microsystems from UDAF, and we have information for that we can share if you want to reach out. Last one, just real quick, PFAS. We get a lot of questions about this too. They are very persistent. They've been around for a long time, but we're finding more and more now that they're very persistent in the environment. And we do see them in a lot of pesticides. So if you want to check out your labels and make sure that they don't list biosolids or sewage solids, municipal waste, it's just something to be a little cautious about, because we don't understand all the ramifications yet, except for that they stay around forever. And once you apply it, you are committed to it. It's on your site. And also we're worried about the ramifications of it leaving your site too. So if that's something that you can be aware of and help avoid, that would be a real benefit to your community and to your site and your quality of your situation. Paul talked about, I know I'm done. Paul talked about the Clean Water Act. I just want to say this is how our choices can aggregate. We went from waters in the country that used to look like this, that would start on fire or have all kinds of yucky things in them, and have made them so that we can all benefit from them more. And it's just from all of those little decisions that we all make along the watershed. So thanks so much for being here and for stewarding both land and water in Utah.